If we could have everybody take their seats, please. Good evening. My name is Andy Fox, Mayor of the City of Thousand Oaks, and on behalf of all the representatives here from local government, I want to welcome you to a very important meeting for tonight. It has been a tough week for our community, with first the borderline shooting incident and then followed less than 24 hours after by the firestorms that affected Thousand Oaks, Oak Park, and the surrounding communities. Tonight's meeting, however, is about the process of recovery, a very important process. And so we've assembled staff from city government, from county government here to help you, the residents who have suffered loss, to begin the important and, in many cases, long process of recovery. Before I introduce the city executive, I would like to recognize elected officials that are here with us tonight, who they've been with you all the way through. And so let me first introduce our local Congresswoman, Julia Brownlee. Our State Senator, Henry Stern. Our own State Assemblywoman, Jackie Irwin. Our City Council members, Claudia Bill de la Pena, Joel Price, and Mayor Pro Tem Rob McCoy. And Al Adam. That's yeah. Where's Al? There he is right there. Al's not sitting in an assigned seat, so he threw me there a little bit. Before we bring out the city officials, I also want to give all of you an opportunity to show your appreciation for the city staff, county staff, certainly our first responders, who have really gone beyond the call of duty, so to speak, over the last week. I mentioned at council meeting last night a lot of things that you did not see behind the scenes in both the city and county government was a lot of city folks who had normal day jobs that stepped up and manned the Emergency Operations Center and a variety of other tasks that are not part of their regular job. And I can just tell you, as I watched it firsthand, you could not be prouder of your city employees, your county employees. And so I'd like you all to join me in recognizing their efforts and, of course, the efforts of the police officers, the sheriff's deputies, and the firefighters. So with that, again, thank you all for coming. Tonight is an informational meeting. We have all the important staff people that are here to answer each and every one of your questions and provide information you're going to need for recovery. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce the county supervisor for this district, the 2nd District, Linda Parks.
Thank you very much. It's nice to see people coming together. I know you're here to get questions answered and to get information, but it's also nice to see your neighbors, your community, friends, and I think this is all going to make us stronger. And I also want to give a shout out to Oak Park. We are having community meetings throughout my district, in Bell Canyon, out in Malibu, Yerba Buena, here in Thousand Oaks. We would have it in Oak Park too, except that the venue there has been damaged with smoke and they need to do some deep cleaning. So I really want to welcome the Oak Park community, particularly here. I see we have members of the Oak Park Unified School District here. We have our Municipal Advisory Council. They're also served by the Rancho Simi Rec and Park District. So it's just a very tight community, and I know that very caring community. And one example of that is one neighbor, Mike Williams, a firefighter, who went and helped his neighbor's house to keep it from burning, and unfortunately lost his own house, and then had to go out on the job. So it just is an example of the type of people we have in our community, but we can never be more grateful than we are now for the wonderful first responders. I want to also thank the City of Thousand Oaks. They have been incredibly collaborative, and we will be working closely together, the county and the city, to be able to ensure that everyone can get the services they need. And there are a lot of services available for people who have had damage to their properties, but even other services for people who need it. So I want to thank the people up here on stage, and I hope that you will seek services if you need them. I want to also thank the Canal Rec and Park District. You know, they went from having a reunification center for people from the borderline massacre, and the next day they were an evacuation center for the Woolsey fire. A lot of people had to shift gears, a lot of tough times, but I did want to thank them particularly too. So our county has a lot of experience, unfortunately, dealing with fires. We had, at the time, the largest fire, the Thomas Fire, come through our area. And so we've become a bit of experts on how to recover from fires. I want to be able to present to you now. You don't need to hear more politicians talk. I want to turn it over to our experts. We have a very powerful team. We've got Mike Powers, who's the CEO of Ventura County, and we have Drew Powers, who is the city manager here in Thousand Oaks. And I'm going to turn it over to Mike now, and I look forward to hearing the information myself too. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Supervisor Parks, and to the community, just say we appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight, and just say at the outset, we share in your grieving for the victims of the borderline tragedy, the families, the victims, and we know that they'll forever be part of the fabric of this tight-knit community. The vigils and the outpouring of support for the victims have been so powerful, including that procession for our hero, Ventura County Sheriff Sergeant Ron Helis. On the heels of this tragedy, there's two large fires that your community is having to deal with, and so many of you have lost homes or had homes damaged, and we want to help you move forward from here forward. First we're going to hear from our fire chief and find out what the status of the fire is, and then we'll hear from our sheriff to get a sense of the evacuations, as well as the disaster declarations. We've had several disaster declarations, but we want to translate them to what does that actually mean in terms of local services for you. So what we did, as Supervisor Parks said, we've had some experience with this, unfortunately, with the Thomas Fire. And so we initiated the recovery process on Friday, November 9th. We've used a model that's been recommended by the California Department of Emergency Services. And what you'll see is that we've appointed a recovery director, and that's Matt Carroll, who did it before, and he's here this evening. As well as the city will now appoint their recovery director, and we'll have team leads in all the areas that you'll be able to see, including health issues, housing issues, debris removal, and so forth. And as you've heard as well, the city and the City of Thousand Oaks and the County of Ventura, we work very well together. We have before and we will again on this. What we want is to have a unified single response for you, city and county together. We know that sometimes there's city issues or sometimes there's county issues, but we will be fully coordinated. First, you'll hear about human services, so shelter updates, as well as the local assistance center that we're going to have. Public health update, air quality issues and mental health support services that are available, and watershed and debris flow. Now, it seems crazy to talk about watershed and debris flow with this hot, dry weather we have, but we had to be prepared for it with those hills, with all that higher risk for flooding. So we're going to have our watershed protection folks who have a very strong system of monitoring, assessing, and protecting against. Kicked off right away as quickly as we can, both the debris removal and the permit process. And then we'll hear from our federal partners as well, from FEMA, the support services they have. And then you'll hear about our recovery website, VenturaCountyRecovers.org, where you can get updated information. And then we'll have some questions and answers at the end. And it is my pleasure to introduce the city manager for Thousand Oaks, my partner, Drew Powers. Drew.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for convening on such short notice. We felt it was really important to get together and share some initial information and begin the process of making some connections for all of you. For those of you here tonight that experienced loss or damage to your property, I'm so sorry that this has happened to you. I know how disruptive it can be. Tonight is the first step in our recovery efforts. I'm proud to be here with our county partners. As Mike mentioned, we are collaborating closely to make this process as efficient as possible for affected residents, whether you're in the city or the county. That being said, we know the road ahead is a long one. Our goal is to be by your side and walk through the process with all the various agencies involved. Tonight, we're going to disseminate information. As Mike just mentioned, you'll hear from a number of professionals representing various agencies. This is the start. There's going to be a number of subsequent focused meetings in individual areas as we move forward. Format-wise, I think as you came in, you noticed that we had some tables in the lobby with some specific areas for more direct one-on-one dialogue, because we recognize that many of the issues you're experiencing are very personalized and direct to your particular property. We also distributed some question cards. We've collected some of those already. For those of you that have a question card and are filling that out, if you have it done now, if you want to hold it up into the air, we have some folks on either side that can collect that from you. We're going to be categorizing those together in the back, and we're going to work through as many of those questions as we can. As we wind up this evening, we're going to encourage you for any specific or direct questions that weren't covered or weren't answered, that we're able to get those out in the lobby to talk with the individual agencies. We do have a website, the Ventura County Recovers website. We're going to be promoting it and mentioning it numerous times this evening. That website is really going to be a great reference tool for you. It's going to be a repository of information, and we encourage you to take a look, sign up for updates on that site, and know that that's going to be a good central clearinghouse. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce the Fire Chief for Ventura County, Mark Lorenzen.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, how many members of the audience lost a home? And how many have friends or family that have lost a home? So, our hearts truly go out to you. I am so sorry for your loss. I know it is tragic, and this community has been racked by tragedy, starting with Wednesday night and then again with the devastating fires. So we are truly here to support you. You are so fortunate, and I don't need to tell you this, you are so fortunate to be part of such a strong, resilient community here in Thousand Oaks. I'd like to share with you a little bit as we go through this process on the current status, and then I'll share with you just kind of a few stories that will help, I think, as everybody goes through this, just in processing exactly what happened. But our fire, as of today, is just a little over 97,000 acres. 3,200 firefighters are still protecting your community on the fire. I know this morning containment was 47%. We expect that number to go up after the winds subsided today, and we had a lot of good work out there. Still a lot of structure threat, but the potential for threat is decreasing every day. Obviously, the Santa Ana winds were a significant factor for us. Over 483 structures were destroyed during the Woolsey fire. Right now, around 95 in Ventura County, and obviously it was devastating. I think what's important to understand is kind of how things started. You know, we were all aware of Wednesday night, which is truly tragic. I know members of my department were there at the borderline, and then just the devastating loss of our brother, Sergeant Helis, and then the events the next day. We all knew the winds were coming. We had just a beautiful procession that honored a true hero with our officer that laid down his life for others in this procession. And then our winds started blowing. And just 3 hours after the procession, we had our first start. We all saw the Hill Fire start over in Hill Canyon. And, you know, we were your Ventura County Fire Department. I'll just take a step back. Your Ventura County Fire Department is really, it's your neighborhood fire department. As Supervisor Parks said, we are part of your community. We live in your community. We suffer along with our communities, as does one of our brothers, Mike Williams, who lost his house while saving his neighbors' homes. Your fire department had anticipated the winds and increased staffing probably by about 70% over our additional normal staffing, just in anticipation of that. And 3 hours after the procession, we had that first start, and it crossed the 101 freeway within 12 minutes. That's how rapidly it spread. And then for us, initially, that was our greatest risk, and then just 30 minutes later, we had another start between Thousand Oaks and Simi Valley, which became the Woolsey fire. Initially, that one was around 1,000 acres, and then the wind hit it, and we all know what happens after that. So it's interesting as we look around over the last couple of years, and this just is going to help you understand the new fire environment, because things aren't the way they used to be. We looked last year at the fires in Napa and Santa Rosa and the Thomas fire, the Butte fire that's just devastated the entire town of Paradise, and now our fire, the Woolsey fire, and fires spread so much more rapidly than they used to. So this fire, the Woolsey fire, really started picking up. I'm trying to remember, felt like it was about 11 o'clock at night, and we felt it coming. Fortunately, we had an incredibly robust response with LA City and LA County, and all of our partner agencies from all around us were in here protecting the communities. But we know it's just, you know, a number of years ago, we would come into these fires and we would start to control the perimeters, and if it was too bad, we would start protecting structures. And now we find that we come into so many of these incredibly rapidly moving fires, and instead of even thinking about controlling the perimeter, we start thinking about structure protection right away. And now what we're finding more and more is that we're going right into active rescue. And so that's what we saw as the fire ripped down into all the communities of Thousand Oaks, Oak Park and Westlake Village and Thousand Oaks, and over at Kevington and up in Bell Canyon and into Agora. And what we saw, and I was out there as it was coming down, and what I witnessed was amazing. And I so often will not pat any of our first responders on the back and call them heroes, but their actions were truly heroic. Our law enforcement officers especially, who aren't normally trained to go face to face. That's great. So many of the actions that were taken that first night were really, because of the speed in which that fire was moving, was actively removing people from burning houses. We are fortunate here in our county and our community that we are so closely tied at the hip to our sheriff's office and our Office of Emergency Services. And case in point, what you saw on the Thomas fire and what you saw here is we did not have any civilian loss of life due to the lack of evacuations. Yes. And it is. It's amazing to watch law enforcement officers, not just from our agencies. Same thing, Sheriff Ayub called in help from all of his surrounding agencies. We had law enforcement from all over Southern California in here, knocking on doors, dragging people out, putting them in the patrol cars, driving them to safety. And then once we have people out, then we can focus on the protection of structures. After I started listening to the numbers, and the numbers here, it's still a lot. It's For us, it's right around 100. I think once we get the final count, it's going to be higher. I had to go up in a helicopter yesterday morning just to get an idea of what happened because the number sounds so big. And I think that gave me some perspective as I flew along PCH up through Yerba Buena and Yellow Hill and into Sherwood and Westlake Village and all of our areas that were impacted and up to Bell Canyon. What I realized is that there was a tremendous number of homes that were saved. And I don't say that to diminish the loss that you guys have in here. I just know it's hard to understand why the loss happens. And your firefighters and your law enforcement officers, we legitimately had everybody that was available out there protecting your families and then your homes. We are fortunate to live in this community. We are fortunate to have such an amazing relationship with our partners here. We're fortunate to have robust resources in Southern California. And I am thankful that everybody that raised their hand is here to actually raise their hands. So I'm deeply sorry for your loss. I am so thankful that you are all here to join us and we can share in this process and help you on the road to recovery. So with that, I would like to introduce our newly elected sheriff who took over his duties as sheriff at midnight on Friday night. Perfect timing. I'd like to introduce our new sheriff, Bill Ayub.
Well, thank you, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here this evening. And we've had a tough week for sure. We're grieving, with our own internal family. We're grieving with the friends and families of those that were touched by the borderline incident. And we share in your anguish. Those that have been displaced and lost homes and had homes damaged. One of our primary responsibilities when fire breaks is to assist with evacuations. And I want you to know that even though we were heavily impacted by the borderline incident, we did not skip a beat when the time came to assess the need for evacuations. We were on top of it. We had deputies in the field, and we called in nearly 300 officers from surrounding agencies. You saw, if you're out in our community, you saw LAPD, LA Sheriff, Alhambra PD, El Monte, all sorts of organizations that come to our community to help us out. And when we have times of need, that's what happens. And so just a few numbers. We began our evacuations for the Hill fire about half an hour after it broke. It was moving quickly, heading towards residential areas, and we initiated those evacuations very, very shortly after the fire broke. And the way we initiate those evacuation orders are, there's kind of a multitude of ways. We use a VC alert, emergency notification system. That is an opt-in, at least currently, an opt-in system that you can register for. And if you haven't registered for that, I urge you to do that after we leave here tonight. It's a great system that will inform you of problems, not only natural disasters or fires, but potential criminal-related matters going on in the area, things that are dangerous to you. So I'd really urge you to sign up for that and get those notifications. We also use the wireless emergency alert system. That's that nasty tone that comes across your cell phone when you have an Amber Alert or some kind of emergency. I'm sure most of you receive those. We stood up a website immediately for people to go to look for current information on road closures and evacuation areas and fire activity. And we also established a hotline in our Office of Emergency Services, and that was available to people to call in with questions on where to get services and resources and so forth. All told, we evacuated or issued evacuation orders to nearly 95,000 people. And like Chief Lorenzen said, we had no injuries, no fatalities, and I'm not even aware of any traffic collisions we had. That's pretty impressive. Currently, we have nearly 2,400 people still under mandatory evacuation orders. That's most everything south of Lake Sherwood and the Hidden Valley area. And I'll tell you, we don't take evacuation orders lightly. It's not just something we do willy-nilly. We recognize the imposition it puts on families. it puts an imposition on us because we have to elevate our patrols and staff road closures to make sure bad people don't come in. And we do see that. In the Thomas fire last year, they didn't wait a minute. The people that were evacuating were parking their cars full of goods a few blocks away, and the crooks were breaking into them and taking their stuff. So it's a really serious thing. The first question I ask too is when that fire passes, hey, when can we repopulate? You know, that's a top priority for me. I want to get people back into their homes, but we weigh the safety of the environment versus the need to get people back in the homes. But I can tell you that's a top concern of mine, returning people to their neighborhoods, and we'll do that as quickly as we can. And we'll lift these orders that are the south coast area of our county just as soon as we deem it safe, and hopefully that'll come very soon. So lastly for me, the Sheriff Dean, when he was a sheriff on the 9th, issued an emergency declaration, which was approved by the Board of Supervisors. The state followed suit and declared a state of emergency, and so did the federal government. So those things open up services and funding and relief from state and federal funds for local agencies that are involved in this type of response. And you'll hear a little bit more about that in just a few moments. So next I'd like to invite up the Director of our Human Services Agency for the county, Barry Zimmerman.
Before I start, I'd just like to personally thank the Sheriff Abube and Captain Lorenzen and the tremendous work and effort that they've done over the past couple of days. It's just been outstanding. I'm going to give a quick overview of the shelter status and what transpired. During the major portion of the incident, we had 5 shelters that were a partnership between Red Cross, actually the county, and the city of Thousand Oaks. During the height, we sheltered nearly 750 individuals in those shelters. At this time, we've consolidated down to 1 shelter that remains open for individuals at the CLU campus and at the Gilbert Sports Complex. Right now, we have about 30 individuals still sheltering at that location. So in transitioning now into the recovery, some of the efforts is to where to get assistance, where to get information to reestablish some important documents and other resources that are available to you. And that will be found in a location we call the Local Assistance Center. And you'll hear that term, a Local Assistance Center, or LAC, thrown around. That will be located at the Grant Brimhall Library at 1401 Jans Road. What you'll find at the Local Assistance Center is that you'll see the agencies from the state government, county government, city government, as well as nonprofits, and at the federal level. For example, we have invited state agencies to come, and one of the ones that a lot of people utilize is the DMV will be located there. And the DMV, if you weren't able to carry out your identification, you'll be able to receive a driver's license, and they'll issue it there at the Local Assistance Center, as well as the Department of Public Health from the state will be there, and their Vitals Records Department will be there in order to reproduce birth certificates and other vital documentations that may have been destroyed during the fire. That is just some indication of what will be at the Local Assistance Center. There'll be county services there and resources available. Behavioral health will be there. Public health will be there to answer your questions and also to offer assistance and referral if needed. County services will be there in order to aid and assist any individual. The center will open tomorrow at 1 p.m. It will operate until 7 p.m. nightly up until next Tuesday. And so over the weekend it will be open, but the hours will be shortened to 5 p.m. There. Also located at that location will be FEMA will be on site. And so you can start your application process for FEMA assistance, as well as the SBA will have information located there. And will also, SBA will be setting up their own service center for small business there. The reason I bring up SBA in particular, we have a certain type of declaration that has come from the federal government, allows SBA services and opportunities for financing for individuals. It's not just for small businesses. So families can apply and receive assistance, and they did so during the Thomas Fire. Also, we are coordinating with commercial insurance companies. They are going to set up what we call a little insurance village, and that will be located across the street at the school district's property there. And so for your convenience, commercial providers will be starting to locate there with their disaster recovery trailers as well. So that's what, in general, you'll find at the local assistance center. I would encourage you to go and visit all the tables. You'll be introduced to information. There'll be a lot of information if the providers aren't there that you'll need maybe down the line and in the future. We'll ask you to register and to sign in for there, and then you'll be also then on a distribution for other charitable donations and opportunities for assistance as they come available. Finally, the County of Ventura Board of Supervisors has approved a housing assistance program for those affected by the fire. This is targeted toward those that may have been renters and those that were renting in whether it's a house or apartment or whatever, and has now become homeless or needs to find new housing. It is an income limited program in the sense that a family of 3 with a household income around $109,000 will qualify, and that will be assistance to transition into other housing, whether it's to find housing, secure housing, to make some limited repairs, those type things, or anything to transition into a housing situation. So that I would encourage you to attend the local assistance centers to gather that type of information. I will now invite up to the mic Dr. Levin, our County Public Health Officer.
I'm so sorry we have to be here tonight. How do you know when you're in an area with poor air quality due to the fire? It's an obvious question. That's when you smell smoke, when you see falling ash, or when you're experiencing irritative effects from those. Ash can be irritating to the skin, nose, lungs, throat, and may cause coughing and rarely nosebleeds. It can make your eyes run and be reddened. You can have a tickling in your throat. Fine particles can be inhaled deeply into the lungs and may worsen asthma or other lung conditions. Pregnant women and the elderly or the very young can be particularly susceptible to this. Don't allow children to play in the ash. They're going to want to. Wash and clean all children's toys carefully after possible contamination. Children should not be in the vicinity while cleanup is going on. And keep pets out of the ash, and if they do get soiled, wash them off. What's the best protection from poor air quality associated with a fire? Well, the best protection is leaving the area. The next best protection is to go indoors with windows and doors closed, using air conditioning if desired and available. And the third best is wearing an N95 respirator mask. A word of caution: don't put a mask on people who can't take it off. People who are mentally or physically limited may not be able to remove a mask that they can't breathe in. Everyone should limit the amount of time they spend outdoors and stay indoors as much as possible. Run your home or car air conditioning on recirculate. If you or your children have asthma or another lung disease, Follow your doctor's orders. Take your medication rigorously during this period of time. For those who cannot avoid being outdoors in a smoky environment, the use of a respirator, either an N95 mask or an N100, will help filter out particles, but they don't remove gas. They don't remove poisons that are in gas. N95 masks are not magic, and their effectiveness is limited. Small-size respirators cannot be trusted to fit well on children. Effective use of a respirator mask relies on selecting a size and model that will provide a tight seal between the respirator and the wearer's face. Don't rely on a surgical mask. A surgical mask is one of those pleated rectangular masks that have 4 strings on it or one rubber band on each side that goes around your ear. Surgical masks are used to filter your breath from contaminating others. We put them on sick people. Respirator masks filter outside air from getting into you. N95 masks last for long periods of time, probably weeks, but if it becomes difficult to breathe in one, and that's how you know they're not functioning well anymore, it's time to change, and this can happen after only a few hours if you're exposed to ash. They should also be changed when they no longer fit tightly. Ash from burned structures is generally more hazardous than forest or wildfire ash. Forest ash is no more or less harmful than the ash in your fireplace. Ash from buildings may contain chemicals such as lead, cadmium, nickel, arsenic, asbestos, perfluorocarbons, flame retardants, and caustic materials. Because the substances in ash vary, it's always best to be cautious, assume the worst, and avoid any unnecessary exposure. On returning from a mandatory evacuation, how do you clean your home? Again, the best option is to hire a professional. If you can't or won't do that, wear an N95 mask, long sleeve shirts and pants, and gloves. Minimize skin contact, because if the smoke and ash is from a nearby burned structure, it may contain toxic and cancer-causing chemicals, which can be absorbed through your skin. And then when you're done cleaning up, bathe. Debris removal and the declaration of a public health emergency will be discussed by Bill Stratton, the Environmental Health Director. I did want to mention something about behavioral health, which for I think many of us, maybe most of us, is the most important form of health we have to be concerned about right now. Ventura County Behavioral Health is here to support our community to recover after this series of tragic events. After a disaster, people can feel stress, grief, guilt, or anger, or depression. It's important to remember that there are always ways to cope. You do not need to deal with difficult times by yourself. On our website, wellnesseveryday.org, that's wellnesseveryday.org, you will see a box with wildfire and disaster resources. And there you'll find information pages that explain common reactions to stress and include steps people can take to cope and stay healthy after a wildfire, as well as resources and mobile apps that can be used to explain this to children and help them to process these events. Behavioral health staff will be at the local assistance center that will be opening soon for linkage to resources and providers in the area as needed. In addition, if you'd like to speak with someone, a professional, Ventura County Behavioral Health encourages residents to call the crisis team. They're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and help's available in English, Spanish, and some other languages, and you do not have to suffer or cope alone. And just on a personal note, if you're suffering, do something about it. And if you are sensitive to the fact that you see others suffering, try to lead them towards getting some help. Next, I'd like to introduce Jeff Pratt, who will be talking about debris removal and other topics.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Pratt with the County Public Works Agency. And debris in the context we'll be using it in is the debris that's fallen down from the burns up in the watersheds. It's debris that can collect in rainfall and end up in undesirable places and create all sorts of problems for us that we need to be prepared for. I'm going to be talking in watershed terms because part of the Public Works Agency's mission is watershed protection. How many of you know which watershed you live in? So you're going to want to get real familiar with your watersheds in the coming years. These areas are going to take a number of years to recover fully. And before they're recovered, the problem is that the fire creates conditions that worsen the runoff. Not only will the runoff be increased because less of it can permeate the soil, and it will run off, but it will be carrying debris along with it, which is like putting ice cubes in a glass of water. So for a given volume of water, you're going to have a higher water elevation. So the flood maps that you might be familiar with that are produced by FEMA are no longer valid, at least for the next several years. So what do we do about it? Right now, we have people on the ground in the field doing assessments on the watersheds. So we're looking at the soils, we're looking at the slopes, we're looking at the shape of the watershed, any remaining vegetative cover, and we're trying to figure out how much debris is going to be produced in these sub-watersheds for a given rainfall. We do that because we have all sorts of rainfall gear and weather monitoring gear out in the watersheds, and we have for decades. That gear is tied to models that we run on these major streams that tell us for a given amount of rainfall in a given place how much water is going to be in an area downstream, Caneo Creek, for example. Medea Creek, for those of you in Oak Park, for example. So we go out, do the hydrology assessment, and once we're preloading the models that we call hydraulic models, and once we have that information, we'll start loading the models, the hydraulic models. We'll run the model, we'll see where the water goes with the debris-laden flow, and we'll start creating areas of high vulnerability and doing risk assessments. Now, through all of this, we're connected at the hip with the Sheriff's Office of Emergency Services. And we're working on creating evacuation maps based on flood threats and on evacuation routes. That modeling for the hydraulics should start sometime early next week. That model will continue to be, those models will be continually refined through the coming years until the watersheds have recovered from a vegetative and soil perspective. So what do we want you to remember about this presentation tonight? Well, first, that we're out there working on your behalf and we'll be in contact with you. Second, if you haven't already done so, you need to register on VC Alert. The sheriff had talked about that earlier. You'll get notifications on flooding. The evacuations, if the Thomas Fire is any experience, would be very, very focused and targeted based upon whether the way the cells will move through, the way the models will tell us we're vulnerable, and so forth. Another thing we want to leave you with tonight, if you haven't done it already and you're close to a water body, and that means creek, rill, gully, could be a lake, you're probably going to want to think about buying flood insurance. Flood insurance takes about 30 days to activate once you purchase it, and it will cover you against flood-related debris flows, and they can be significant. I think there are FEMA reps here tonight that might be able to give you more detail, but if you're in an area that's not normally subject to flooding, it's a very reasonable cost, something like $400, $500 a year, and it provides you with a peace of mind you might otherwise have. We have homeowners guides on our website. My colleague Jay Spurgeon will be talking about that a little bit more, but that will help you. Now, while we go out and do the analysis, we're not responsible, and we can't be, for all of the water bodies. Where we can and we see there's great risk, we're going to go after any sort of funding we can find with, through the federal agencies, FEMA, National Resource Conservation Service et al., to try to build some mitigations. Where we own facilities on these major channels, of course, they'll be operational and we'll be looking for additional mitigations in those areas. But the important part of that message is that you've got to protect yourself. We can't be everywhere at all times. We can tell you what's coming, what to expect, and we can help you get prepared, but we're not going to be everywhere with the flood fighting. You need to be especially cautious at the urban interface. That is, if you're butted up against the mountains, where the flow comes down and interfaces with the urban development, there are choke points, pipes, rills, gullies. Those can easily become clogged with debris and overflow and create all sorts of havoc, even in just localized areas. We're going to be working with all the partner agencies, the city included, the parks districts, the Caltrans, to try and identify all of these areas that we can and make them available to you on our website. For those of you who don't know, it's an 80% chance El Nino year. El Nino generally has more rainfall. This is from the National Weather Service. We're expecting and preparing for a higher than average amount of rainfall this year. You should know that we have our own meteorologists and hydrologists. We do our 30-day forecast, working with the Sheriff's Office of Emergency Services. We do 14-day forecasts, and then we start to get down to the real good forecasts, hard forecasts, about 72-hour forecasts. All through the storm, we're revising the forecast, running the cells and running the hydraulic models. All the evacuation orders that the sheriff will issue will be based on the information that we provide through those modeling efforts. One of the things you can do to help yourself is sandbag. Get yourself some sandbags. We have, at this point in time, currently on hand about 10,000 empty sandbags we'll be sharing, and we'll be buying more. Those should be available at fire stations, public works yards, and other places throughout the community. We also have about 2,500 filled bags. Filled bags are a lot harder to handle when you're loading them. Typically, a family sedan's not carrying more than 10 or 15 of those. So you may want to look at, if you have a lot of sandbagging you want to do, buying some sand and just coming and getting the bags. These bags are designed to last about 3 years in the UV. They're mid-range price, and we've found them very good service in the Thomas fire. I think that's all I had to cover. I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Jay Spurgeon with the city.
So I'm Jay Spurgeon, Public Works Director here in Thousand Oaks, and many of you who are here tonight who did not lose a home probably have a home or resident or maybe a business that is adjacent to a burned area. And I can imagine your concern about coming rainfall and what might come off of this burned area into your property. And so I want to just reiterate that you need to take measures to protect your property. One of the things that we have out in the lobby are copies of this homeowner's guide for flood, debris, and erosion control. This is a really excellent, it's a very straightforward, it's a simplified do-it-yourself guide that shows you how you can protect your property from those kinds of flows, debris, mud coming off of a slope into your yard, into your backyard. The idea here is that you're not going to be able to stop these flows. And we're not, the city can't, the county can't, really nobody can. What you are trying to do is route these kinds of incidents, of these kinds of events around your property. Get them around your home, out to the street. Once they're in the street, they may cause some flooding, there may be some debris and mud buildup, but the Public Works staff can come with equipment and take that away. Again, this is an excellent guide. This is also available online. There'll be links to this and other resources similar to it, such as what FEMA puts out on the VenturaCountyRecovers.org website. Please register, as we have mentioned to you, because we will be pushing out a lot more information as the teams finish their assessments throughout the city and the county areas, what watersheds are of more concern than others. And for instance, we are already planning a more detailed, very focused flood and debris protection expo that will be that will occur in December, somewhere in the community here. We have not set all the details yet, but we will push that out through that website, so please register, keep your eye out for that, and then come to that event where we will talk a lot more about details relative to this. As Jeff said, sandbags are available at all of our fire stations. We are going to also make them available at the city's Municipal Service Center, which is located at 1993 Rancho Caneo Boulevard. It's all the way out at the end of the industrial area in Newbury Park. We've already purchased sandbags, both fillable and filled. We're going to continue to do that as the year progresses and try and keep those stocked for everybody. One of the things that I think is out there that I want to just briefly address, there's some confusion about whether you need to boil your drinking water in Thousand Oaks or in Oak Park or anywhere else, other areas in Ventura County. And I regret their confusion, but the water supply in Thousand Oaks and in Oak Park and other areas here in this part of the county is safe and has been safe throughout these fire incidents. So again, sorry about the confusion. There was a water system in Ventura County that did require a boil water order, and I think that the news coverage, well, there was some both in Los Angeles and Ventura County, and that's where that came from. But your water is good here in TO and in Oak Park, so at least that is something you don't have to worry about. I want to just remind you about the question cards. We have staff on both sides. If you have already written a question down on a card, why don't you start sending it over to the aisles? Just pass it on to your neighbor, and then you can kind of create a little stack. And at the end, that you can hold it up, and we'll start collecting those, because we do want to try and answer some of your questions at the end of our presentation. We also have staff, all of us, and other staff out in the lobby, as mentioned, and we're available there. If we don't get to your specific question, please come see us. I now want to turn over the presentation to the Environmental Health Director for this County of Ventura, Bill Stratton.
Good evening. As Jay mentioned, I'm Bill Stratton. I'm with the County Environmental Health Division. And unfortunately, we've had some experience with the Thomas Fire. What I'm going to be talking about tonight is debris removal and kind of that first step in that process. Dr. Levin mentioned that when structures burn, specifically houses burn, there's a number of hazardous substances that are generated. And on November 9th, Dr. Levin declared a public health emergency for that reason. Because of the potential public health adverse impacts associated with these hazardous substances that are created when a house burns, and all of those materials that you have inside the house, that public health declaration was put in place. It did a couple things. First, what we had to do is, because we don't want to encourage people to go in and start digging around in that ash. Now, we understand you may want to go and look for those mementos and those items, and Dr. Levin talked about how you can protect yourself when you do those things. But when it comes to the debris removal, when it comes to starting to move forward and clearing your lots, there are certain requirements and limitations that are in place. What this declaration does is prevents, or we suggest that you don't start removing that debris. The second part of this is it allows the county to submit a request through Cal OES and through our federal partners to participate in what's called the Consolidated Debris Removal Program. This is something that we did with the Thomas Fire. 10 days after that public health declaration was issued for the Thomas Fire, we had DTSC, which is the State Department of Toxics, come down, and they started doing what's called a Phase 1 household hazardous waste survey and removal. So they had crews that came down, worked with Environmental Health Division, and we were able to clear up to 1,000 properties of household hazardous waste, asbestos, and all of those other items from these properties within a very short period of time. That's the first phase. That's called phase one. After phase one is complete, if we're successful in being allowed into the program, phase two begins, and that's the actual debris removal. That's removing that debris from that footprint of your house. With the Thomas Fire, we had Cal Recycle, which is a state agency, came down with their contractors and cleaned up close to 700 parcels. We did that in about 5 months. They had upwards of 40 crews out working on those projects. So with the public health declaration, it allowed us to submit our requests through the state. I remain optimistic that we will be allowed into the program. Unfortunately, as you know, there are a number of fires throughout the state, so Cal OES, Cal Recycle may be stretched a bit thin. We also have, I should back up, the phase two program is a voluntary program. So some homeowners choose not to participate or have the state come in and remove that debris from your property. It is a voluntary program. If you choose not to, or for those residents who choose not to participate in that program, the county has established a local debris removal program. What that does is allows you to hire your contractors to go out and start removing those waste debris or those debris from your property. The cleanup standards for the local debris program are the same that the state requires or the same that the state meets if you go through that phase two project. So there are state and federal background and cleanup standards that are met when you go through the state program. When you go through the local debris program, those same standards have to be met. Now, we've shared the information with the City of Thousand Oaks staff. Part of that local debris program it requires a local ordinance. So for the Thomas Fire, our Board of Supervisors adopted an emergency ordinance that outlined all of those requirements and those time frames for debris removal on these properties. We've shared that information with the City of Thousand Oaks. I anticipate that we'll bring a similar ordinance to our board sometime at the beginning of December. It's important with the local debris program, and why we have those cleanup standards in place is because we don't want, during that cleanup process, we don't want ash to be airborne. We don't want contractors to use air blowers or lawn blowers and leaf blowers. It's a very controlled debris removal process. With the state in their phase two program, I don't know if you had an opportunity or if you had friends over in Ventura, but they have monitoring devices, they had water trucks. It was very tightly controlled. All of the debris is what they call burrito wrapped, and so the landfills wouldn't accept any of this debris unless it was wrapped. And so when these trucks travel down the road, this ash and debris isn't going all over the place. So it's very important that during the cleanup process, if you choose to go with a local debris removal program, that you handle your debris responsibly. We don't want you impacting your neighbors. And so that's one of the reasons the ordinance is in place to address those issues. The information on the local debris program will be available at the VC Recovers website. Many questions that we get have to do with, well, my house wasn't destroyed, but the trees and my fence and the gazebo. We do have exceptions for that. We do have procedures in place where you can get trash bins available and remove that material, but we want to keep a very close watch on that because we don't want large roll-off bins going in the neighborhoods and everyone start putting their debris, as tempting as that might be. So we want it to be very closely monitored. So that concludes my comments. We're going to have this information available at the VC Recovers website. I have staff that will be available out in the lobby if you have any questions specific for debris removal. And with that, I would like to introduce Mark Town, who is the City of Thousand Oaks City Community Development Director.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, just on behalf of the entire City of Thousand Oaks community, I wanted to express our sincere sorrow for those of you who lost your homes, and to let you know that we are all here to help you get through this difficult period. I would like to convey the concept of city staff working really as partners with you as you seek to rebuild your properties, and we recognize how important it is to get you back into your newly built homes as soon as possible. To that end, we are actively engaged in two efforts as I stand here tonight. One is to review our permit processing process itself to see where we may be able to modify it to expedite the process for all of you who lost your homes. We will be identifying those steps in the near future and posting those on the Ventura County Recovers.org website. The other step that we are taking is preparing property-specific packages for each of you who lost your home with the permits and planning history for your particular home and its lot. That would include information such as past entitlements, building permits, building plans, which should help you to significantly improve the rebuilding process. You can hand those over to your architect as soon as you make that connection. Should also mention that as we look forward to rebuilding your homes, we have certain common steps, such as the debris removal that Bill just spoke to. But after you go through those initial steps, the planning and design standard for different entities is different for the County of Los Angeles, the County of Ventura, City of Thousand Oaks. So it's important that you understand which jurisdiction your home is located within. I think most of you know that. If you don't, city staff can certainly help you to identify that. And the applicable standards for the City of Thousand Oaks, of course, we will provide to you in those informational packets. It's very important to register on the Ventura County Recovers.org website. That will be our portal for communicating going forward. However, having said that, we do have staff who will be directly involved in the rebuilding process. Here tonight, we have a table outside. Our business cards are there. Please pick one up. We will be in contact with you and can answer more detailed questions as we all go forward in this together. And so with that, I would just like to thank you all for being here, and I would like to introduce Mr. Winston Wright, County Permit Coordinator for the County of Ventura. Thank you.
Good evening. Again, my name is Winston Wright. I work for the Planning Division at the County of Ventura. And first, we'd like to acknowledge your loss for anybody who has lost their home and assure you that we understand there are people behind the permits that we review and issue. And unfortunately, we've had the experience of the Thomas Fire. So to let you know, our goal is to assist homeowners through the permitting process in a streamlined manner so that fire victims can get back in their homes as soon as possible. In response to the Thomas Fire, we implemented several measures to assist homeowners through the process. We identified a permit coordinator to provide a single point of contact for homeowners. So a lot of the running around that you have to do between agencies within the county was expedited and facilitated. We established a permitting hotline to provide a quick response and questions and even set up a method in which you can set up appointments and come in and meet firsthand or directly with the permit coordinator. We coordinated between other agencies that review our permits, like the fire department, public works. We have a variety of different scenarios in Ventura County that we won't necessarily encounter in the cities. We have more rural properties that rely on wells, septic systems, deficient roads, and so forth. So we've come together and identified waivers that could be utilized in certain circumstances, as long as you build the same size home or smaller. And we've also set up a permit expediting process through building and safety. So we like to try to return permits within 2 weeks with corrections if they're required, so that you can get a fast turnaround on your building permit once you're able to submit that. We expect to take similar steps for this catastrophic event, and we'll be providing additional information on the website. The VC Recovery's website will have the contact information for the hotline, and you will be able to set up an appointment to meet with the permit coordinator through that website as well. You can set up an appointment through email process that way. And with that, I'd like to introduce Jeffrey Kruger from FEMA to give you some background information on federal assistance.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Kruger from FEMA Region 9 out of Oakland, California. I'd like to begin by saying my heart goes out to this community. You guys have really had a rough go of it lately. And I want to give my thanks to Sheriff Ayub and his great team for hosting me in their EOC the last few days. So on November 12th, the President proclaimed Ventura County a major disaster area. Pretty similar to what most of you went through last year and earlier this year for the Thomas Fire, with the major difference being that individual assistance program was granted right away, whereas last year I believe you guys had to wait almost 2 months before that program was granted. So that has several connotations for this community. Let me just go over a few things. So first of all, how do I register for FEMA assistance through the individual assistance program? There's several ways to do it. All right. One is you can call a toll-free number, 1-800-621-FEMA. All right. The other way you can register is to go to www.disasterassistance.gov. And number 3, for those of you that prefer in-person encounters, is to go to the local assistance center. I will have staff supporting the county and the state agencies at the local assistance center. You can contact us there and register for FEMA assistance. Additionally, I have staff in the lobby of this facility, and you can go out there and visit them right now or after this town hall meeting and get your questions answered. You can register for FEMA assistance and just start the process there. A few things that I just want to brief just to manage expectations. The first thing you need to do is contact your insurance company. That's always going to be the first step. The individual assistance program is not here to replace your insurance benefits, and it cannot be used to duplicate insurance benefits that you may have received. The individual assistance program is not going to make you whole again, and I think that's a common misconception. I just want to put that out there right now to manage expectations. It is there to help you get started on recovery. A few other things. You may be eligible for FEMA grants through the individual assistance program. Those grants do not have to be repaid. Also, FEMA assistance is non-taxable, and it will not affect your eligibility for Social Security, Medicaid, or other federal benefits. You may be eligible for rental assistance or home repairs if the home you live in for more than half the year was damaged and is unsafe to stay in, does not have power or water, or you cannot get to it safely. Again, I encourage you to visit disasterassistance.gov, call 1-800-621-FEMA, or come see us at the local assistance center. We will be there through Tuesday. Now, the local assistance center is scheduled to close Tuesday evening. I'm going to be working very hard over the next several days to secure a more permanent facility here in Thousand Oaks to establish a disaster recovery center. And there at the Disaster Recovery Center, or DRC, we'll have FEMA staff, we'll have Small Business Administration staff, and there'll be a number of state agencies. And I've also extended the invitation to any county agencies that still feel the need to have a presence in an assistance center for the disaster survivors. So as soon as I have a facility secured, which I hope to in the next few days, we will be actively putting that information out via all manner of media outlets and outreach. I will be followed by Mr. Corey Williams from the Small Business Administration. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Corey Williams, and I'm a public information officer with the U.S. Small Business Administration's Office of Disaster Assistance. The SBA is the long-term disaster recovery partner for those that were impacted in Los Angeles and Ventura counties by these devastating fires. And this is the second time in this calendar year I've had to come to Ventura County, and you know, it's unfortunate, and my heart truly goes out to all the victims of not only the previous fire, the Thomas fire, but this fire especially as well. Now, for our program, we offer loans to businesses of all sizes, loans up to $2 million to repair, replace disaster damaged real estate, machinery, equipment, and other business assets. But one of the most important things for a business owner, especially whenever you think about some business owners that may not have had physical damage, is economic injury. For many of the business owners that had to evacuate their business for, let's say, 3 or 4 days, well, that's revenue that was lost. So SBA also provides working capital funds to sustain the business throughout this recovery period as well. Now, the business loan interest rates are as low as 3.74%. And again, we have a flexible deferment period of up to 5 months. Now, also, we help out nonprofits. Nonprofits are also eligible to borrow up to $2 million to repair, replace disaster damaged real estate, machinery, equipment, and other business assets of the nonprofit, which would also include any faith-based organizations. Now, nonprofits are also eligible for economic injury disaster loans as well. Now, the interest rates for nonprofits is as low, well, actually it's fixed across the board at 2.75%. Now, for any homeowner or renter in Ventura County, we also offer home loans up to $200,000 to repair, replace disaster damaged real estate, and up to $40,000 for homeowners to repair, replace disaster damaged personal property, which may include any vehicles that were damaged as a result of these devastating fires. Now, renters are also eligible to borrow up to $40,000 to repair, replace any disaster damaged personal property as well, which would also include any vehicles that were damaged. Now, the interest rates for homeowners and renters is as low as 2%, and again, it's a flexible deferment period of up to 5 months to make sure that that business, that homeowner, that renter, or nonprofit kind of gets themselves back on their feet before the recovery process would start. Now, we're going to open up a business recovery center in the Ventura County Community Building on Friday, November the 16th at 9 a.m., and that's going to be in the Economic Development Collaborative, and the address is 4001 Mission Oaks Boulevard, and that's Suite B. Again, that's 4001 Mission Oaks Boulevard, Suite B, and that's in Camarillo, California. And again, it opens this Friday, November 16th, and the center will be open Mondays through Saturdays, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and we'll be closed on Thanksgiving. Now, for any homeowner, business owner, nonprofit, or renter who also may not have time to visit a local assistance center or one of our business recovery centers, you can apply online by going to disasterloan.sba.gov/ELA. Again, that's disasterloan.sba.gov/ELA. Or you can call our customer service center number, which is 800-659-2955. And for any business owner, last point, that need any assistance as far as kind of putting their business application together, we also partner with our small business development centers, our women's business centers, and also our SCORE partners. So we want to make sure that if you need any assistance in putting together your application and you're unable to visit one of our business recovery centers or the local assistance center, you can always stop by one of our local SBDCs, SCORE, or Women's Business Centers. So thank you very much for your time, and I will pass it along.
Good evening. My name is Matt Carroll. I'm the County Recovery Director, Recovery Program Director for the County of Ventura, and I just wanted to close off the formal presentations with a couple additional very quick points on behalf of our tax collector, our assessor, and our website. So you may have heard you know that property taxes are coming up due in the first payment. Our tax collector, Stephen Hintz, has put in place a process where you can request a deferment of your payment without penalties and interest. All you need to do is submit that form, and he has indicated that those will be approved for this fire, and that those forms will be available at the local assistance center, and they will be available also as well on the website for the county treasurer tax collector. On the assessor's side, there was some questions about how do I deal with reducing my property value now that it's been destroyed. Our assessor has a program known as a calamity claim, and if you submit a calamity claim, they come out and they reassess your property very quickly. For the Thomas Fire, which had many, many destroyed homes, they were able to not only complete the reassessment, but in many cases submit refunds or lower the taxes in time for the second assessment. And if you remember, that occurred in December. So there's a very good chance that if you submit your calamity claim now, your second payment will be adjusted accordingly. And in some cases, if you do a refund, you will get those. And those assessments, I'm not an assessment expert, but they will remain in place until the value of the home changes. In other words, till the reconstruction begins. So that information is available through our through our assessor's website, and we're also trying to have those forms available at the local assistance center. And I think you saw our clerk recorder, the county clerk recorder. If you have need of vital records, replace a birth certificate. If you need a deed of trust, a property deed, if you need any vital records or land records, they will provide replacements for you free of charge. So please see, they have an office here, and they will be manning that office over the coming weekend. So if you need those replacement vital documents or land records, they can provide them for you. And then the last thing I want to say before we get into questions is the website. You've heard it before. It's VenturaCountyRecovers.org. There was one sign that we had .com up here. It's .org. It is up. It's taking registrations. It's the best way to get proactive notification of events as they occur. And I think we have well over 100 registrations already, so please go on there, register that. The information right now is pretty basic, but as we get into, as soon as we hear of the approvals from the state on the debris cleanup, you'll see more information in all of our areas begin to build as we get that additional information. But basic information is up there right now. So with that, with regard to questions, we had a number of questions that I believe were answered, and they fell into the categories of debris removal, mud flow and debris concerns. You're concerned about your hillsides and the flood or debris flow coming off them. There were some questions on property taxes and adjustment. That'll deal with the calamity claims I discussed. We had some Westlake residents on the LA County side requesting services or how to get in touch with services. We have a request for LA County to co-locate with us up here. Our space is very tight. We're going to try our best to accommodate those folks. If not, we will get in touch with you. We have the contact information for those individuals, and we will proactively reach out to you tomorrow and let you know where you can obtain those services. And again, we're hoping that can be local. There were some questions on housing and rental assistance that I believe Mr. Zimmerman answered, or the FEMA folks answered, but we have one question in there we're still going to turn over, we'll talk about. There were some questions on soot and ash and health concerns, and hopefully Dr. Levin addressed those. So we do have some questions that we do believe that weren't addressed, so we're going to cover those, but please know the rest of the individuals will be available in the lobby, so if you didn't get your question answered, you can talk to them out there. And the first is for Chief Lorenzen. If you can come up and talk about the question you have.
This is not going to be a very exciting answer. My question is, do you know the cause of the fire? So it's unfortunately the normal official answer you get so early on is both fires, the Hill Fire and the Woolsey fires causes are under investigation. We have teams of Ventura County fire and sheriff's officers and CAL FIRE arson investigators all involved in the cause of both fires.
Our next questions have to deal with some response concerns and some housing concerns on the pricing side. So we're going to have Kevin McGowan, who works for our sheriff in the Office of Emergency Services, address those issues.
Hello, thanks Matt. Kevin McGowan, Assistant Director for the Sheriff's Office of Emergency Services. The first question I'm going to address is related to the Santa Susana Field Lab. First, I would like to just acknowledge that we know that there's a lot of legitimate concerns out there regarding what took place on the Santa Susana Field Lab and how that's impacting our surrounding communities. Early on during the incident, federal organizations represented by the Department of Energy and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, along with the state's agency of the Department of Toxic Substances Control, who are responsible for regulating that site, began assessing the location and surrounding areas for contaminants due to the fire. Numerous soil samples and air samples have been collected on the lab site and then nearby areas. The organizations responsible for doing these assessments and the regulatory functions released a statement that said that the preliminary results of the assessment have shown that there's been no release of radiological or chemical contaminations. The U.S. EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, along with the Los Angeles County of Public Health's Radiological Management Unit, are going to continue to do assessments, both air and soil assessments, and they'll be providing information to local authorities and to the public through public information channels, and will notify us if there are any changes. The second question I'd like to address is related to emergency notifications. Our emergency notification system in Ventura County is very sophisticated. It's a multimodal system that includes the emergency alert system, which dates back to the civil defense eras, and it's the broadcasts that go out over the TV and radio systems. We also use the wireless emergency alert system, which was activated numerous times for these incidents. We have an organic system locally in Ventura County called VC Alert, which allows us to contact people via email, phone, cell phone, and numerous different methods. And then we rely heavily on in-person notification with firefighters and deputies or police officers going through neighborhoods. We use public address systems and then actual in-person notifications. So this system is triggered using an evacuation coordination group that is centered at the incident command post. They take real-time information that we're getting from the field. They make decisions based on assessments, and then we push out those emergency notifications. As Sheriff Ayub discussed earlier, we take this responsibility very seriously, and we ensure that we try to put out as accurate of information as possible in a timely manner. The last question I'm going to address is the rental and lease rates. So disasters present an interesting challenge when it relates to housing. There becomes a disparity between the supply and demand in our communities, and unfortunately, at this time, there are no mechanisms in place to control that disparity in rental and lease rates or increases in rates. What we suggest and what we've suggested in previous disasters is that you attend the local assistance center and meet with our housing and rental assistance program experts, and they can give you really one-on-one guidance on how to best solve your unique situation related to rental or leasing properties. Thank you very much for your time.
Our next question is going to be answered by Barry Zimmerman, and it deals with parents with children.
The question that came to me is, how do parents deal with school being closed and causing the need for childcare? Unfortunately, there's not a simple answer or resource associated with that. The approach could be in unique circumstances where arrangements can be made with families or friends or neighbors would be the simplest. Depending on the situation, there is a local organization called CDR, is the community organization that manages childcare and childcare slots, as well as subsidized childcare, and also sometimes grants associated with childcare, and they may be of assistance as well. So if this is a common issue, I will be around afterwards because it really, there might be some other resources available based on your individual circumstances, and I'd be more than happy to entertain that.
And our final question of the evening is one we're going to have our FEMA rep answer, and it has to do with various types of claims that are submitted and what FEMA can do to help in that area.
Okay, so the first question I received was, how do property owners file claims for wind and smoke, et cetera, damage? So the first step is to go to your insurance company. Beyond that, as I said before, you can register for FEMA assistance through 1-800-621-FEMA, www.disasterassistance.gov, or in person at the local assistance center, the disaster recovery center when we get that open, and also through our disaster survivor assistance teams, which for the next few days are going to be working at the local assistance center, but they're also going to be doing targeted outreach in some of the communities that were hit hardest by the fires. One note about that, our FEMA folks that are going to be out in the field going door to door, they are going to be wearing FEMA gear and they're going to have a government issued badge. So there are probably going to be people out there that are going to try to impersonate FEMA staff in order to collect your information. So if you get that funny feeling, absolutely challenge them and ask them to show you their badge. It should be visible on them, either through a lanyard or a vest with like a clear pouch. But that's how you file claims for any type of damage to your home. And then what happens is once you've registered for FEMA assistance, an intake specialist will reach out and contact you. And at some point, an inspector will come out to your house and look at the damage. Now this, of course, takes time. So my recommendation is to document everything, take lots of pictures. You know, if you're gonna start spending money to repair your home, I encourage you to do that, but save your receipts, because if you are eligible for assistance, you can be reimbursed after the fact. Now the second question was how does FEMA assistance work for renters? So individual assistance also applies to renters, but again, the first step is to reach out to your insurance company if you have renter's insurance. Once you've done that, I still encourage you to apply, to register for FEMA aid. Again, 1-800-621-FEMA, disasterassistance.gov, or in person at the local assistance center, or through one of the disaster survivor assistance teams that's going to be out in the community. We do have renters assistance programs. You may qualify for them, but again, the first step to doing that is to register for FEMA assistance. And one last thing, the registration period for FEMA assistance is 60 days, and that started on November 12th, the day the disaster declaration was signed by the president. So I'm a little short on fingers, but I think it goes to the 11th of January off the top of my head. And also, one last thing, I do have FEMA staff in the lobby that can give more detailed answers to specific questions if you have them. Thank you.
So those are all the questions we have time for this evening. Again, as FEMA, we have a lot of folks out there. I'll turn it over to our host, Drew, for some closing comments.
Thank you again, everyone, for coming this evening. We recognize that there was a tremendous amount of content shared, so thank you for your patience in sitting through it. Hopefully you were able to glean some information that is at least initially helpful. As a reminder to you, this is the beginning of what will be a series of meetings. The other meetings that you'll participate in will, in all likelihood, be more focused in specific areas. As a reminder, we do have a lot of professionals that will be out in the lobby. I encourage you to, you have questions that are out there. We encourage you to take the time to chat with folks in the lobby and get some information. If you haven't signed up with our sign-up sheet, please do so. And please also jump on and sign up with our recovery website as well. Thanks again for coming this evening, and we look forward to chatting with you in the lobby.